preach on a passage that you guys are probably very familiar with. No, not Revelation. I don't know if I can handle Revelation. But you guys probably know this scripture a lot. The David and Goliath story. That's what we're going to be in today. And I know since most of y'all pretty much grew up in church, I was praying, I was asking God to give me a new outlook on it, a new perspective on it. Because the text has one meaning, that Jesus defeats our battles and our giants, but you can apply it in many ways. And I was praying for a new outlook and a new perspective on it. And I got a message. So we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 16. 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 16. There's quite a few things that go on in this passage. So I'm going to read all the way to verse 26, but I'm going to mention verse 47. I was thinking about reading all of that, but we might be here all night, and I don't know if we'll ever get to the complete message. It might take up a lot of time for that. So we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 16 through 26. In verse 16, it says, "For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. One day, Jesse said to David," this is his dad, David's dad was Jesse. He said, "Take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers. And give these 10 cuts of cheese to the captain. See how your brothers are getting along and bring back a report on how they are doing." So his dad basically gave him an assignment to do. And he's going to check him on his brothers, going to give them food and give a report on how they're doing. Little does David know there's another assignment waiting for him that's going to show up that we're going to see in the passage. Verse 19 says, "David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the camp, just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelite and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. 'Have you seen the giant?' the men asked. 'He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He would give that man one of his daughters for wife, and the man's entire family would be exempted from paying taxes.' David asked the soldiers standing nearby, 'What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway that is allowed to defy the armies of the living God?'" So I was contemplating my sermon title. I had 2 sermon titles. I was going to call it Unexpected Battles, but I decided to call it How Did I Get Here? How did I get here? Have you ever wondered that in life sometimes? Like, how did I get here? How did I get in this place, in this position? How did I get stuck here? How did I get just in this sports team, in this friend group? How did I get here? Hopefully you're not thinking that right now, but sometimes in life we would think that of how we got here, to a place that we either just don't want to be at or we didn't expect to be at. My mom has this crazy way of, when we go on road trips, she always ends up taking us to the wrong destination first. Like, we're going to Orlando in a couple weeks, and I'm really concerned if she drives. Because, listen, I love my mom to death, but if she drives, she might take us to Tampa or Miami. Who knows? A couple years ago, we went to Atlanta. It was me, my mom, Brandon, and my cousin Liv. We were going to Atlanta just to stay overnight and explore the city and everything. And we were supposed to go to the hotel first, check in and everything. She took us to a Wendy's, like we were going to have dinner or something. Like, she took us to a neighborhood and we didn't get to our hotel first. It was like, at first we were laughing it off because it was kind of funny. But then we were like, why are we here? Like, how did we get here? Why are we in this situation? And that's what we think sometimes in life. Like, how did I get here? Why am I here? And it doesn't even have to be like a physical place. Like, it doesn't have to be in a building or just wherever you may be at. It doesn't have to be a physical place. It can also be like an inside place. It can be like, how did I end up struggling with anxiety? How did I end up struggling with depression? How did I end up struggling with social anxiety? How did I end up struggling with loneliness? You know, the list goes on, whatever it may be for you. How did I end up struggling with that? Just about all of the stuff that we face in life, we didn't see coming. I was looking at the text, and I was just looking at it, the verses before and verses after. I was like, how did this happen? How did David end up fighting Goliath? How did he end up on the battlefield with his brothers? How did he end up facing Goliath? And why is he out there? And for me, I always thought the story was like the little guy beating the big guy. You know, it's the underdog story. You know, people use it for motivation. You hear it in sports. It's the little guy beating the big guy. You hear it all the time in that way. And we put Goliath. Come on, we put Goliath in just about anything. You know, I'm facing my Goliath. I'm just taking a test. I'm facing my Goliath. I'm just doing a job interview. We put Goliath in just about anything. You know, but I don't think we realize that David, when he woke up this morning and went to his brothers, he wasn't expecting Goliath. He wasn't expecting to face some giant that was twice his size. He wasn't expecting to face Goliath. And when he got there, when he went to go see his brothers, he's on the battlefield talking with them, and then Goliath shows up. He wasn't expecting that. He was expecting to see his brothers. Now, the Israelite army were, because for 40 days, Goliath came out and did his normal shouts, his normal bullying, his normal taunting, and they were used to it because he was doing it for 40 days. And they were used to his physical nature and how big he was. They were used to his how he would talk. They were used to it. But David wasn't. He wasn't used to Goliath. And while he's out there on the battlefield talking to his brothers, doing exactly what his dad told him to do, Goliath shows up. Goliath shows up. He hears Goliath doing his normal taunting, and he's confused. He's confused on who he is because he never seen him before. He never seen somebody twice his size, 9 feet. He never seen that guy before. And so he looks around and he's confused. He hears Goliath and he's like, what's going on? Because when he got there, they were on the battlefield as army against army. And everything was good, right? They were about to go at it, and then Goliath shows up, and then they all run. They as soon as they see Goliath, everyone lives in fear, and they run. He asks the soldiers about him in verse 26. He says, "Who is this pagan Philistine anyway? Who's this? Who's this? I never seen this guy before. Who's this? Who is this guy that you guys are scared of? I never seen him before." And that right there is exactly sometimes our response to some battles that we can face. Like, what is this? You know, who is this? I didn't sign up for this. It wasn't on my to-do list, my checklist for the day. I didn't see this coming. You know, sometimes we would think we're doing something else and something will come up. You know, like some battles you won't expect and you can't really prepare for them, you know? Nobody expected COVID, and nobody definitely expected to go on this long, you know? Nobody expects to lose a family member out of nowhere, you know? Nobody expects to have some inside struggles, you know? Nobody expects to lose someone when you've been with them for so long, you know? But it happens, you know? And you don't get a warning for some battles, you know? Like David didn't get a warning. Goliath was just out there and showed up. It just shows up. Some battles you can't really prepare for. You don't see them coming. But listen, last night I knew I needed to preach this word because God confirmed it for me. Last night my dad came into town and we went out to eat, had a good time. He lives in Raleigh. And I'm in there and we leave Buffalo Wild Wings. He goes home. I go to my house, and next thing you know, my car starts having problems. And as soon as we leave, some red light pops up, and I'm like, what is this? And then I smelled oil while we're driving. I'm like, what is going on? And as soon as I text my dad. I text him the picture of the red thing, and I'm like, my car smells like oil. What do I do? And he's like, pull over. I'm like, cool, but I'm in the neighborhood. I can probably make it home. And he's like, all right, try to make it home. I didn't make it home. I didn't make it home, guys. So in my neighborhood, they're building like a roundabout, and I get past the roundabout, then my car goes straight to 0 miles per hour, and I'm stuck, and I try to get on the grass, and my car stops, every light's on. Brandon's looking at me like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know, I think we're dying. I don't know what's going on here. The car's about to blow up. I'm like, what's going on? It might catch on fire. Who knows? Something's happening, and I didn't expect that. I was expecting to get home safely, and I didn't expect that. Some things that happen in our day, we don't expect. But it's interesting. You know how in middle school and high school, teachers will say, study for the test? You know, study for the SAT, ACT, and all those big tests that we have to take in life in high school, middle school. By the way, in college, they do not warn you about tests. They don't tell you to study or anything like that. You're on your own. I'm going to prepare you for that battle. But in middle school and high school, they tell you to study for the test. Good advice, right? Good advice. Because to pass the test, you kind of need to study a little bit. But, I mean, in the real world, you can't really study for some battles, right? They just show up unexpectedly, and you face them. You can't, great advice in the classroom, but in the real world, it's kind of limited. You can't prepare for some battles. And that's what happens. And that's what happened with David. Goliath just showed up unexpectedly, and David wasn't expecting him. He wasn't expected to fight someone this day. And even before this, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, David wasn't expecting to be a king. He didn't even get invited in on draft day. Samuel's out there looking for a king. He looks at all his brothers. He says, he thought that was the one, but the Lord said, that's not the one I called. David's out in the fields, and he's serving God, and then he gets chosen to be king. David wasn't expecting that. He was just expecting to be a shepherd boy and tending the animals. He wasn't expecting to be king. Even some of the things God will call you to, you won't expect. You won't expect. I would have never expected to be preaching. Never. This laid back, quiet, kind of quiet. It depends. It depends. But it doesn't make no sense. Some of the stuff God will call you to, it won't make sense. Some of the stuff God would do through you won't make sense. Some of the stuff God would do for you, how he would use you, it won't make sense. You won't expect it at first. And you would have never thought you would face some battles. You would have never expected some things. And just like David this day, we're all going to face some battles in life that we didn't see coming. We're all going to face something unexpected. So how do we deal with it? How do we deal with something that we can't really prepare for and something that we didn't see coming? How can we prepare for something when we can't study for it and when we can't prepare for it and see it coming? Well, maybe cliche to say, but sometimes to go forward and sometimes to face what's in front of you, you must look back. You must look back on the Lord's faithfulness at another time. And David did this. I didn't read this verse, but in verse 37, David remembered that the Lord helped rescue him from a lion and a bear before, when he was serving in the fields, and when animals would come at him, when animals would come at the animals, the Lord helped rescue him from a lion and a bear. So he looked back to help him face Goliath. Sometimes to face what's in front of you, and sometimes to face what you would go through in life, it's good to look back on what the Lord has done for you, on his faithfulness, on his love, and what he has already rescued you from. Because the first thing David killed wasn't Goliath. He already killed a lion and a bear before in the fields, and he used that to help him go forward. Now, Goliath was a bigger challenge for him. He's like 9 foot something, twice half his size, bigger challenge. But the same God who was with him in the fields that helped rescue him from a lion and bear will be the same God, the same exact God that will rescue him from Goliath. And he knew that. He knew that. In every battle that we face, God is with us. Everything that shows up unexpectedly that you didn't see, God saw it. He knows. And every battle in life that we're going to face, because we're going to face them, it's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. And when they show up, don't forget about God. Don't forget about who your Father in heaven is. That's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is try to fight something alone and try to live life alone and try to isolate yourself and reject people and reject God, because we must decide to face what we go through in life with God. Because we don't choose everything we go through, but we can choose how we deal with it, and we can choose who we go to. Because we don't choose to struggle. No, nobody likes to struggle. If it was up to us, we would want to live a great, glorious life, right? Nobody chooses struggle. But how we deal with it and who we go to helps us deal with the struggle and face what we go through. And decide before something unexpectedly shows up that you go to God first. This is what David did. He decided to mention the Lord when they were doubting him, when his brothers were doubting him. His brothers about half hated him because they were jealous that they weren't the king. They were jealous of David, and they pretty much hated him. And when he got out there, they were like, what are you doing out here anyway, David? And then King Saul said, you're too small, you can't do this. So everyone's doubting him. And then Goliath is, talking trash to him. And then in verses 45 and 46, David replied to Goliath, you come to me with the sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. So he was introducing Goliath to the God that he knows. Sometimes to face the battle and face the problem, you got to introduce your battle to who you know God is. He's faithful. He defeats our battles. He's with us. He's kind. He's a loving Father. And in verse 46, he says, today the Lord will conquer you. See, David knew who the battle was. He knew that he was not facing this battle. He knew that this was the Lord's battle. In verse 47, he says, this is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. I mean, David is confident. He's like, this is not my battle. This is the Lord's battle. I don't have to fight this one. This is the Lord's battle. He defeats our battles. He conquers everything, and he likes to show his power, show his strength through someone small like David. David didn't kill Goliath with his strength. He's small. He didn't have no strength. What strength could he have had to kill Goliath? Goliath was too big for him. But he depended on a higher weapon in God. He depended on someone that could and that he knew that would fight the battle for him. So our job isn't to fight the battle. Our job is just to have faith. Our job is to worship. Our job is to pray. Our job is to be in community, be in fellowship. That's our job. Because he fights the battle for him. And everything changes when we shift our focus, not on Goliath, not on our battle, but on Jesus. Because for 40 days, the Israelite army, they lived in fear. As soon as they saw Goliath, what did they do? They ran. But when David saw Goliath, he was confused. What are you guys doing? You guys know who God is. You guys can take him on because we know who God is. So when David seen Goliath, he was like, this is nothing. I know Goliath is nothing compared to the God I know. The battle that you face is nothing compared to the God you know, to the God that you serve. Because David knew how this battle was going to end. He knew that Goliath was going to go down because he knew Jesus was bigger. He knew that the God that he serves, the God that he loves, the God that he served in the fields was going to come through. Because God doesn't lose a battle. He never wastes a battle, and he never loses a battle. And so whatever battle you're facing, whatever battle you will face, it goes down, not because we can do it, but because Jesus never loses a battle. The story of David and Goliath is not about David beating Goliath. It's about Jesus beating Goliath. It's about him defeating our giants in our life. And I think our mindset would change if we just think I know how this is going to end. I know how this battle is going to end. I know how this story is going to end because God wins in the end. And he defeats our battles. We may not know all the details. We may not know all the information. But we know one thing for sure because of this text. That every battle that we face, Jesus wins. And he comes through in the end. And he calls us to put our trust in him. The battle always belongs to him. It's his battle. It's not our battle. He's the champion, and he's the one who takes control. Our job is to have faith, have trust, pray and worship being a battle, and his job, he fights with his strength. And it's our job to depend on that strength. And let's never take that glory from him when he defeats our battles. Whatever it may look like for you, and whatever battle you face in any season of your life. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for this beautiful text of how you never lose a battle, and even though Goliath was big, he was not bigger than you, and even though the battle and our Goliath in our life is big, it's nothing compared to who you are and how kind and loving and faithful you are to us. And Lord, I thank you that for everyone in here and all the work that you've done in their life and that you are going to do in their life. And I pray that as we leave here and as we go throughout our week, that our faith continues to be developed and we devote ourselves to you in prayer and worship and to your word. And Lord, I thank you for who you are and your faithfulness, your love, your power, your strength. And in Jesus' name, amen.